Welcome back. All right, so I wanted to do something a little different today for all you fine people on the internet for my TEG video of the day, as this channel continues to put up some good numbers and show some good growth. So I am fine with standing in front of all you fine people on the internet and having a little discussion today. Also, I'm almost a full week ahead on my jersey collection videos that I've been doing on the other channel. They're about, I think I'm 6 days ahead currently on that, and then I'm going to get ahead on. I started a favorite player series yesterday. I think I'll be recording some of those to post while I'm on vacation. And then season previews, I want to get some of them done for while I'm on vacation as well, so I can enjoy my vacation. And it is quite different doing this 365 days a year, and it is 365 days a year that I do this. I don't take days off in general. I could. I've explained why I haven't. I'll just quickly explain that again. Just in case you're new or you haven't heard, I find it important to make sure that there's a routine that I stick to. I really like my routines. And I know there are people who consume my daily content and that it might be helping them get through some tough stuff. I've seen comments this week on the channel about people going through health concerns, who are mourning the loss of loved ones, the loss of a pet, who are using my daily videos to get through all that. So I could take days off and I could be like, that's it, I'm not posting anything today, but I know there are people who are counting on that content being there. Now, it is a far cry from the jobs I've had. So I'll go through the jobs I've had, and I don't know that I've ever gone into any sort of detail. So I started off with, I worked at a ceramic shop where I would mix the clay. And of course, if you don't mix it right, you have to mix everything in the right order or else you've made soup. Very expensive. You're going to get fired soup because then they have to dump everything out and then they got to start over again. So I was good at it. The one thing was you're supposed to wear a mask. I didn't like wearing a mask while I was doing that. They had to do it outside too because some of those chemicals are really quite noxious and dangerous. So I would just turn my head and not breathe while I was pouring these bags out. So you have these giant bags of the various ingredients, and you rip the bottom out and you put the bag in. And so I'm trying not to breathe while all these silicates and everything's in the air. I I don't know if I could go back and do that over again if I would have worn. I think I would have worn the mask. I think I would have worn the mask. But then you pour your molds and you do greenware. I miss ceramic shops like we had them back then. I really enjoyed doing my own ceramics. I had all kinds of dragons that I made. I gave them all away. So if you're looking for my ceramic dragons, I'm sorry, I gave them all away. But that was a fun job, but it was a part-time job. And once Christmas was done, people weren't buying ceramics. So I had to find a full-time job. So I picked a full-time job at a poultry plant where I was told by everybody I wasn't going to last. You're not going to last. You're not going to make it. Nobody ever lasts there. So I stayed for over 7 years just to prove people wrong. And I started getting back spasms. I wasn't getting much money from there either. My last raise from that place was 17 cents. So when you work a whole year for a company and they go, here's your raise, it's 17 cents an hour, and you go, huh. So let's see, 17 cents times 8, that's how much more I'm making a day. If we have an 8-hour day, if we have a 6-hour day, that comes out to, I need a new job is what I'm making. And so eventually, and part of this too was that I did get into a relationship. I did have a ready-made family that was included with that. And I needed to make more money. So I went to work at the call center. Now, the poultry plant, I should explain a little bit about what I did there as well, right? Eviscerating was my main job, which is gutting ducks, geese, quail. Sometimes we had turkeys, we had pheasants, chickens. At times we had chickens. They were the Chinese chickens, though, famously of the Bare Naked Lady song, 1 week. But yeah, it was not a fun job because what happens is that sometimes you'll be, eviscerating and you might get a rib bone right down your fingernail, and you haven't lived until you've had a rib bone underneath your fingernail where you jam your hand in there. And so my hand would get sore, and so the boss threatened to fire me if I didn't learn to be ambidextrous with it. Yeah. I hurt myself and I was told, look, either you learn to use your other hand or you're fired. So I became ambidextrous at that job. That was fun. That was fun. I'm naturally left-handed, but I've Because I'm left-handed, I'm used to things being made for right-handed people, so I've never been completely useless with my right hand. So I guess that worked to my benefit. I worked in shipping for a while there, not loading the truck, but I would get everything ready to load. I'd load up all the pallets. I also worked. We would do the bagging everything off. I also would pull out the windpipes. That was another job. So sometimes I'd be eviscerating, sometimes I'd be pulling out the windpipes, and sometimes there was a big like industrial type vacuum that was attached to the ceiling, and you vacuum out the lungs. You know, there's a reason that I cook all of my meat well done, and it's all the time I've spent working at meat plants and seeing how CFIA, which is the Canadian Federal Inspectors Agency, how much places I've worked don't necessarily share all the information with CFIA they should, and how sometimes the meat might be a little bit warm or might be a little bit old, and they're like, we'll just package it up and say, just don't say anything. It's like, oh, all right, great. Cool. What about all that condensation? That's fine. Oh, cool. Great. That's nice. So, yeah, because I know when I say that I like even beef well done, I get, oh, I can't believe you want beef well done. I worked with beef, but we'll get there. So I did the poultry plant for 7 years and killed my back doing that because I was on a really cracked, crappy concrete floor most of the time. They fixed the floor right before I left. And then I worked at the call center. So one of the reasons for doing this video is because I was asked about what I did at the call center. And basically, I worked for, it was various contracts for the building. There was Hewlett Packard at the other end. There was Hewlett Packard for various computers, and each computer had its own dedicated agents. So you weren't expected to know all the Hewlett Packard, just some of them. And we also had printer support, so that was a different contract. We had Microsoft DSL. We had Microsoft Dial-Up. We had MSN TV. Oh, anybody have MSN TV? Nah, you're all too young because they were all octogenarians that I supported on that. It was great. There was the odd young guy that might be trying to view an adult website on MSN TV. Why would somebody call support so that they have a ticket on their account that certain adult websites don't work with the MSN TV unit, which was just, they weren't great. I just always found that weird. I don't think that I would ever call, like TELUS is who we have for our internet. I would never call TELUS and go, this adult website doesn't load properly on my computer. No, you don't. Why? Anyways. And it was always the same answer. These units are old. We're not updating them. That website will never work. If you want to view that website, you'll have to get a computer. Sorry. But customers would call in. They'd yell and scream, usually. We would have a long queue. The queue normally got really long when Colorado got home. It was a joke. It was a joke that I would make. That we would have time in between calls and we could all talk to each other on the floor. And then all of a sudden it was really busy. And I would say, I guess Denver's off work because the phone lines in Colorado sucked. They were awful. Q West's lines weren't great. We weren't allowed to tell them that. I might have snuck that in here and there. I might have snuck in here and there. There were times where I'd be on the phone. It was call after call after call. And the customer would be like, I can't get online. And I would say, are you in Colorado? And there'd be a pause and go, yes. Are you in Aurora by chance? Yes. Yeah, so there's an outage in your area. Before we get into this, there's an outage in your area. QS is looking to fix this, but just so you know, or Quest. Just so you know, that's what's going on. That's where things are at. I used to throw them off that way. And I found that my calls went quicker that way. That I would start it with, are you in Aurora, Colorado? Are you in Denver? Are you calling from there was a bunch of other little suburbs there that we'd lose connection, and I'd be like, okay, so there's an issue going on in Colorado. And then the funny part was you would report an outage. So you report it to your senior agents. Your senior agents then report it to the client, which is Microsoft. Microsoft then calls over to Quest. Quest reports back to the client, who reports, by the time it came back, it was, yeah, they think everything's fine. It's not fine. I don't care. We can play this game of telephone all you want. It's not fine. And I think it's the most frustrating thing in the world is when you're a phone agent and you know there's a problem, and you're telling people there's a problem, and you get back, we don't think there's a problem. Okay, there is a problem. So eventually I got promoted. I think part of the reason they promoted me was so that I would stop causing so much trauma on the, on the phone lines. And because I knew what I was doing. I was like, I know what's going on. I know what it is. I had one call that I knew was a phone line issue. So you would go in and you do, and I knew this right away. I cheated. You would get like, here's your script, and here's you go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And so this guy's talking about what's going on, and he was getting a web page, and then he wasn't. And then he was, and then he wasn't. And it was high speed. So with dial-up, I could understand that, but with high speed, nah. So I was like, okay, I want to try something. So I went into DOS, which is outside of Windows, has nothing to do with Windows. Just eliminate Windows from the equation. And I did a ping test, and I found they were losing packets. Well, if they're losing packets, that is a phone line issue. That's it. I don't have to do anything more on this call at all. So I call through to the senior line, and I get told, well, did you uninstall and reinstall, I don't remember what it was, TCP/IP, which is, tech speak. And I said, no. Well, did you do cache and cookies? So I heard that. And I said to the person on the other end of the phone, who was my senior agent, the one that's trying to tell me what to do, I said, did you want me to uninstall and reinstall Internet Explorer while we're at it? Because I can make this call last 45 minutes if you want me to. I'm losing packets in DOS. And so this person got really kind of upset with me for saying that and started going through, but you need to do all these steps because I can't escalate it if you've done all these steps. And I paused and I said, I'm losing packets in DOS. This has nothing to do with Windows. Therefore, it is an immediate escalation. I can't escalate this until you've done the other steps. I don't see a point in doing the other steps. I'm losing packets in DOS. I think I said it like 5 times. So the person on the other end of the phone got mad at me, reported me to a supervisor, and I knew they would. I was like, you report me to a supervisor. We've got a red queue. We've got about 50 calls in queue. You're telling me to have a 45-minute call with somebody that I know I can't fix. They have to go to Quest, and the only way they get to Quest is by me escalating this to the next level. So supervisor comes over while I'm doing what they told me to do. I did start doing those steps. So the supervisor comes over. What seems to be the problem? And I muted the mic and I said, we're losing packets in DOS. And he looks at me and he goes, well, that's a phone line issue. That's an escalation. I said, tell them. Go over and tell them right now that it's an escalation. I want this gone. I am wasting this customer's time. You have a really long queue. Your handle time, because they would show us the average handle time of the calls. Your handle time is ridiculous right now. I'm trying to bring it down. I'm trying to get these calls out of the queue. I'm not allowed because they told me not to do that. So supervisor leaves me, comes back over about 5 minutes later. Yeah, you go ahead. You escalate it. You put my name on it. You send it. So we would move the ticket from our queue into the escalation queue. And then the escalation team would send it through to who it needed to go to. It was a complicated process I never quite understood. So I didn't have a great relationship with that senior agent for a while after that. They were actually removed from the phone line for the rest of the evening and made to take calls, which I'd love to say I didn't joke around or laugh at, but I did. Because I was losing packets in DOS. So it's just one of those things. And working at a call center is soul destroying. It is not a fun job because you understand what the customer's going through, and sometimes you'd agree. So sometimes they'd be like, oh, MSN Messenger, we've changed this about it. And I would say, why? It works fine. Why are you adding this feature? Well, we think the customer will like it better. I'm telling you as a user of it, I hate that idea. That's stupid. Well, we want you to tell the customer why this is better. Yeah, but I don't understand why this is better, so how am I going to tell them? Can you guys understand why I wasn't allowed to go to meetings after a while? So I spent 7 years doing that. I had a 6-month period where I worked at 7-Eleven because I was told that You can work your way up in the company pretty easily, and you can make really good money. You can. You can make really good money working at 7-Eleven, but it's not as easy to do all the tests as they tell you that it is. And after 6 months, I hadn't been able to find the time to do all these tests. I hadn't had a significant raise, so I left. Eventually, I ended up at the last full time job I had before I became a YouTuber, which was at another meat plant where I spent almost 10 years. This time, though, it was beef, it was pork, it was lamb. We did, geez, what else was there we did? There's a bunch of other stuff that we would do, but we couldn't do poultry. I had a supervisor at one point say, "We want to do poultry," and I said, "You can't." And he just looked at me and goes, "What do you mean you can't?" And I said, "Poultry is completely different than beef and pork. You guys would have to jump through so many hoops. And not only that," I said, "it doesn't keep. So we can't have the meat sitting in the back and waiting to be processed. Basically, you go from kill to the truck completely processed within 6 hours. You can't do poultry the way that you do everything else." And I turns out I think I was right. I think I had that one right because they never did do poultry. I As soon as I heard that, I was like, "You can't. I know you guys want to. I know it's not going to happen." They're like, "Well, we're talking to CFIA," and I'm like, "Good luck," because I basically what they would have had to do. They would have had to build barns to have all of these, whether it's chickens or ducks or whatever they wanted to do. They would have had to build that whole infrastructure on top of what we already had, and there was nowhere to put it. There was no room. So I just didn't think, and the amount of money that would have cost millions. So no. And then there's the avian flu problem, which hit the poultry plant I worked at after I'd left, and they had to call, man, I want to say 20,000 birds. They had to just call the whole flock. It hits the flock, they all have to go, and you have to start fresh. You have to start all. So you are out of work for 6 weeks until you have the eggs hatched, the ducklings that have got big enough that you can go back to work and start working again. It's at least, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks. You're done. You're off work. You're on EI. You just don't have a job for the next couple of months. Avian flu is scary stuff, and it's in the local birds and everything, and it's yeah. It has the potential to really destroy the entire poultry industry, just absolutely annihilate it. Because I know it's hit the plant that I worked at least twice. And you have to call everything. You can't just get rid of the sick birds because all the other birds have been exposed. They're going to get sick as well, and so there you go. So I did almost 10 years of that. I worked with pork. I worked with beef. I did do some work on the sausage was another line that I worked on briefly. I didn't enjoy. You know how they say you don't want to see how the sausage is made? Yeah, you don't. You don't. You might think you do. You don't. It's gross. It smells bad. It's like old cat food kind of smell, and it's all sticky and it's kind of grimy, and it's not like I'm like the innards of the sausage. And I love sausages, but nah, I didn't need to see how they were made. I've eaten a lot less sausage actually after I saw how they were made. So that's why they tell you don't want to see how the sausage is made. So those jobs set me up for what I do now. And it gives me a different perspective, I think, than 95% of YouTubers. A lot of people on YouTube are a lot younger than I am. So in all likelihood, they haven't gone through that 9 to 5 grind. And I've got more than 20 years of that 9 to 5 grind in my history. I am well aware that what I do here on YouTube is not work in the same way that was. The difference being that the content has to come from me. So when I went to work at my old job, and I guess I can say Vantage because they're not Vantage anymore. But when I worked at Vantage, I would go in and they'd be like, "You're on the scale," which is just weighing off all the product and tagging it. It's a hard job because you're weighing off every single product in the plant, and you've got to be fast because that's 7 lines that are feeding into one spot. So it's a bottleneck, and if you get behind, it'll kill your shoulder. A lot of people I knew had major shoulder problems. After I quit, I did see one friend of mine, she ended up having to quit because she had a doctor's note saying she couldn't do that job anymore. It was killing her shoulder. And they informed her, you have to do it because you're the best at it. And we don't have anybody else to take your place right now, so you have to do it. So they forced her to quit. And she's not the first instance I've seen where somebody was forced to quit on that job. It's awful. It is an awful job. I was good at it. I could keep up pretty well, but yeah, when you get behind, it is. And if you turn the line off, if you turn off that belt, you have 2 supervisors minimum coming down to ask you what the hell you're doing and telling you to turn that line on. So you've got these basically each one weighed about, I don't know, 6 or 7 kilos, which isn't a lot. I would say average 6 or 7 kilos. But now you've got 20 of them pushing down. So you've got that weight of about 20 of them pushing down on where you are, and you're trying to pull these totes out. And so you have to kind of pull back and pull, and it has to be in one motion, and it just kills your shoulder. And then this arm starts to hurt because you're pulling back to try to pull the one out. It's awful. It's a terrible job. And anytime I'm having a tough time on YouTube, and anytime people on YouTube are telling me I'm old or I'm stupid or I'm senile, I remember that. And I think, okay, now remember the scale. Remember people yelling at you on the phone when you work tech support. Remember when you'd basically hurt your own hand. I lost a fingernail from viscerating ducks at the poultry plant. And I was still expected to work with that hand that I did not have a fingernail on. There was, and I know people are going to say, why didn't you go to workers' comp, or why didn't you report something? If anybody reported anything to the labor board, they were fired on the spot. They would find any reason. In fact, if you even talked about going to the labor board with the poultry plant I worked at, the boss would stand and watch you and yell at you on the line, and just yell at you until you left. So yeah, it was very unpleasant. It was very uncomfortable. There were times that I saw people just get fired. He'd come in and for no reason at all, he'd be like, you're gone, you're fired. And that person would turn and look at me, and I'm like, if I defend you, I'm fired too. There's nothing I can do. And well, this isn't fair. I'm going to go to the labor board, and I'm like, dude, good luck. Honestly, good luck, but people have said it before, and it doesn't go anywhere. It is thankless work. And so I don't expect thanks on YouTube. I do get that at times. I've never wanted it. I've never asked for it. I come into the hockey room every day and I go, what am I going to talk about today? I did 3 videos today. Well, yeah, I did 4 videos today because I did 2 of the Jersey videos. And then the other 2 videos I didn't have pre-planned. I was like, what am I going to do videos on? And then I go, okay, I'm going to talk about this. All right, now I'm going to talk about this. And I try to make sure that I keep my expectations low at this time of year because people are not thinking about hockey. But there are people counting on that daily content as well. So I understand my view counts drop because it's hockey in August. Nobody's watching that. So that's why I'm starting to do more videos on this channel too. I want to build this up so that during the regular season I can still do hockey videos, but I can still carve out some time for this channel as well. And talk about the wrestling, talk about, once we get into football season, maybe get into a little bit of talk about the Chargers, who are going to disappoint me, but of course they will, because that's what the Chargers do. Bengals too, they disappoint me equally as much. But all of that experience and all of that stuff that I've gone through has definitely meant that I have a different viewpoint when it comes to being a YouTuber and all of that. I didn't start making videos thinking I'm going to make money, this is going to be my job. I started making videos thinking this is a fun hobby. I can talk to a camera, I can post it online. And then when I started making a little bit of money on it, I was like, well, that's fun. I made $50 this month. Neat. And I did not start thinking, maybe. I think once I hit about 1,000 subscribers, it clicked in of, okay, there might be something here. I might be able to do this. And I really dove headlong into it. So I would work the full 8 to 10 hours at my job in whether it was in shipping, whether it was on the scale, whatever I was doing. And then I would go home dead tired and I would make hockey videos when I got home because I knew that was potentially my chance to not necessarily do YouTube as a job, but maybe I could have a part-time job and YouTube would be a part-time job as well, and then my stress level would drop. And also, the amount of damage I was doing to my body working those manual labor jobs. I don't know what it would have done to my back by now. I don't know what it would have done to my shoulders. I think my shoulders would have been dead by now. I can clearly take more punishment than a lot of other people because I've worked a lot of really hard jobs and have been able to do it for a long time. And I don't have lasting effects from that. I have sore ankles when I get up in the morning. Sometimes I have a dodgy hip, but I think that's my age. You just have aches and pains when you get up. Some of it's probably, I do the treadmill as often as I do. That's part and parcel of doing that. And if having a sore hip every now and then is what I have, but if I know my heart's okay, I will take that trade off. I will take that trade off 10 times out of 10. So I wanted to share a little bit about what I did and about where I've been, and it is something that's always on my mind when I'm doing this. And obviously, it's very important. I've seen people talking about like the ads and all that. Yes, ad revenue is where a vast majority of the income that I have comes from. I do have memberships on this channel and on the main channel. I also have Patreon. I have through thgyt.ca. There's a membership option on there as well, which is through another platform. But majority of the money comes from ads on YouTube. And I understand people don't really like ads. They don't want to sit through them. It's part of the reason why I don't have sponsorships, because I feel like, okay, I've already got ads in the video. I'm not doing sponsorships. I will never partner up with a sponsor that would not match my content. Has to be something that's a seamless fit. That's why I'm fine with like geeky jerseys and having some kind of a loose relationship with geeky jerseys, because where they'll send me product and I'll promote it for you guys. Usually the jerseys they'll send me are the ones that may not be selling all that well, and so they want to get eyeballs on them, and I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to take partnerships with companies where I'm going to be standing here doing a video and then all of a sudden it's an ad. It drives me insane. It drives me insane when I'm watching science videos and all of a sudden it's NordVPN. And I'm like, how the hell did this turn into a NordVPN ad? How? And you have to say things word for word. You have to do it verbatim. You have to, a lot of the time you have to show them the video before it goes live so they can okay that what you said and the words you used are the right ones. And if you post it and if they don't like how you said what you said, they don't pay you for it. And so I'm not going to jump into that kind of thing because it's jarring. And I know a lot of YouTubers do it. I think the funny thing is that I see people say, well, he's got all these subscribers and he's way too many. He's being greedy. I see channels that have millions of subscribers that are doing all the paid sponsorships and the ads. And I mean, just multiple paid sponsorships sometimes in the same video. So I understand the sentiment, but at the same time, there are channels much larger than mine that do the same thing. And so more of all of the advertising and sponsorship stuff. And then they'll throw in an ad for their store at the end. Like, don't forget to check out our merch drop, which I really don't do. I really don't promote that. And I feel like part of what makes the channels work, and I'm hoping helps to get this channel not necessarily to the level of the hockey channel. That's never going to happen. I'm aware of that. But to get it to a level where it does make a decent income so that I can do more casual stuff here, talking to all you fine people on the internet, than they necessarily do on the hockey channel. I feel like there's a good chance for me to be able to build that following, and I don't want to do anything that's going to mess that up. Because I don't ever want to find myself in a position, and it is entirely possible I find myself in a position someday where I'm back at a manual labor spot. The problem with that now is I'm a little bit older than what they would normally hire. So now I'd be in a situation where they'd be like, this guy hasn't had a manual labor job in about 10 years. We really want to hire him? Do we want to take a shot at him? Or do we want to hire this kid that just came in that's about a foot taller than him and 19 years of age? His shoulders won't give out right away. So, yeah. There's a lot of consideration for me at this point in time about all of that. So I wanted to do this video today and just chat with all you fine people on the internet, get into a little more detail about what I used to do and what I've done, and how frustrating that was at times. And yeah, it's a very very lucky thing that the channel took off the way that it did, and that I do see the potential for this channel to be more than what it is too. So who knows? Maybe at some point in time, maybe this channel will have a set that's its own room as well. Maybe that happens. Maybe have a whole room that's TEG. We're not there yet, but maybe sometime at some point in time that we'll see that take place. But thank you guys for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. The growth on both channels has been amazing, and I really do find that because I was doing those manual labor jobs and those very thankless jobs as long as I did, the work ethic that I try to carry out on both channels is really really high, because I understand there's a lot of people still working a lot of those really thankless jobs, and when I would come home from work, sometimes YouTube was what settled me and made me feel sane. So if I can help people at the end of a long day at work settle down, relax, maybe you crack open a beer, maybe you crack open a diet cherry Coke, whatever you're drinking, you just sit down and go, all right, I'm going to watch some THG. I'm glad to provide that for people. I'm glad to provide that for anybody. And so, yeah, there you go. Thank you guys for your support, though. It's greatly appreciated. If you haven't already hit like and subscribe, please do. And if you work in any of the kinds of jobs that I've been talking about here, if you work in the agricultural sector especially, you have endless respect for me, because if you work an agricultural job, they can make you work 12 days a week. The laws do not apply. Labor rules do not apply with agriculture because of the nature of the product, because it has an expiration, because you have to have those orders done in a timely manner. They can make you work 12 days a week. They can make you work 10 hours a day, 12 days a week, 12 days in a row. That was the record for me, was 12 days in a row. And they were 10-hour days for 12 days. Then they're allowed to do it. And as a first aid attendant, I saw endless people coming through with bad shoulders, bad wrists, bad backs, bad knees, because it was just brutal, and they were expected to go right back to work. So I am very, very grateful for this, for what I have, and for this connection with people on the internet. Thank you guys so much for your time and your attention. I will talk to you again soon.